Hi, my name is Seth Andrews, and this is End Time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Downtime. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, Lance is here. Lance, how are you?
Pretty good.
Good. So,
Cold down.
yeah, it's well, and I'm in New England, and we got the I remember the blizzard of '78. I was like only 4 or 5, but I remember it because it was a thing, and that stuff like that can happen. You can get snow that goes up to the second story, and you can see people like hanging out on their balconies. You think it's their front porch. No, it's their balcony. But that's actually not the worst. The worst is what we had today, which is the kind of sleet that comes down, makes everything wet and snowy for about an inch, and then the temperature drops more. It freezes into a block of ice that's the consistency of a sponge. So you can't break it, you can't get under it, you can't, and everything is just frozen and locked up, so you can't even get into your car. It's a friggin'... So that's what we've been doing. It's less than an inch, but, oh, God. Yeah, and I have electric heating, so I was just like, oh, yay, another $800 electric bill in my future.
It's not that bad, but it's dropped into the 30s for the first time this year, so, or this season, so.
Yeah,
we're all
50,
going, oh my God, it's freezing.
We had 52 last week. And last year we had it snow twice. So the weather's changing. The weather is definitely changing. So before we begin, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and part of it may end up dovetailing with sort of how the media works, media's responsibility, and other things. Those of you who've been around for a while, and that's most of the people I see already in the live chat, you know what In Time does, and you know that we often cover breaking news, and we try to dissect what you see in the media and try to break it down and put as reasonable a perspective on it as possible, and look at it from all sides. We had an incident today in which nothing happened. And I am very proud that nothing happened. And the reason nothing happened is because everybody on the In Time team did exactly what they were supposed to do. So here's how we had nothing happen. 𝐒𝐸𝐜𝐸𝐿 dropped in the breaking news that there was a magnitude 7 earthquake just outside of San Fran, which I immediately spoke to a couple of people and said, hasn't San Fran been hit by harder? Is that, how serious is that really? Where's the quake? So everybody in the breaking news team started in on this. Blonde Bombsheller, Annette also immediately hit me up with a tsunami warning, where that warning was from, how and why, what we were looking at. And we're tallying this, and I'm looking at CNN, everybody else, nobody's covering it. We are as often ahead of everything, and we're starting to break it down. Let's see. So it was 𝐒𝐸𝐜𝐸𝐿, Blonde Bombsheller, Annette we're going through this thing. I started speaking with 𝐒𝐨𝐿 and Titan. We went into standby. We got ready to go, and we reached the conclusion that there was no immediate evidence of any significant damage, and we were not going to go live until we knew it was a serious problem. Shortly after this, the warning was canceled. The tsunami warning was canceled, and CNN blew up all over it. And CNN was freaking out, telling people that they should still evacuate from. Meanwhile, we did nothing. We went through our normal process. We're sitting there going, hey, of course, we can err. We can do, we can sit there and freak everybody out, but that's not what we do. And I was very proud of our team, who nobody was out there trying to make it bigger than it actually was, and everybody was skeptical of everything. And by the time we were done, we said, we're not going. So we didn't go. We let it go. CNN covered it. Mainstream media covered it. They covered it in kind of the way they usually do. A lot of big, I think they went on for about an hour on how catastrophic this was. In the end, the CNN headline that I like the most, and this is a real headline, you can find this on CNN, 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐜𝐬, which was the name of the town that was closest to the earthquake. 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐜 resident says he felt seasick from earthquake vibrations. That is why, even though we had this ahead of CNN, we didn't go with it, and I was just proud of everybody who worked on it, and the people who got in touch with me and made sure that I knew, and everybody just made decisions with cool, calm heads. So I think congratulate the choice not to go is as important as the choice to go. So thank you guys for that, and that was an interesting morning or afternoon or whenever that was. So
we had an interesting associated event here at the house. We used to live in the Bay Area, and my wife signed up for all the alert, earthquake and tsunami alert things while we were down there. And so never took us off that list. So here we are sitting at home, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, there's a tsunami warning. And we're going, oh wait, no, that's for California.
We actually had one here. I forget where the quake struck, but we don't normally get them in Massachusetts. We don't normally get tsunami warnings, but there was some place in the Atlantic, there was an earthquake or something, and they're like, the tsunami warning. I was like, does the tsunami know I'm in Massachusetts? Because I don't think I'm allowed to get hit by one. But apparently, but that was a while ago. Yeah, this is why I will say, just while I'm saying this, I will repeat, and people know this, during live shows and during that kind of, once we go into standby and we're preparing for something like this, yeah, my phone doesn't blow up, and the reason is there's only a very few people who know how to reach me explicitly so that I don't get the 16 people, Nick, it's a tsunami, oh my God. It's like, yeah, we have procedures for that, so, and everybody followed them, which I really genuinely appreciate. So, all right, pardons. Now, when Biden first pardoned his son Hunter, I was very bothered, at a minimum, by the appearance of that, and we discussed that a bit on air. I'm not sure that it's a huge deal and worth dedicating a huge amount of time to, but I think it's worth it because it forces us to think at least some about our values. And I was sort of flipped just by reading Biden's eloquent statement on why he did it despite promising not to. So we have linked that statement below. It's in the comments section, so you can read the president's statement on why he pardoned his son. The two most compelling reasons, in my view, is, first of all, Hunter Biden is a private citizen, but Congress went after him and investigated him, and they would never have done that if his name wasn't Biden. They didn't do it because they suddenly cared about gun crime or tax evasion, which, by the way, he had paid the taxes and he had resolved that issue. They didn't suddenly care about the rule of law. They wanted to hurt the president, so they went after his family. So that alone is an unjust act, and since the whole point of a pardon power is to the whole point of
Quiet all of a sudden.
I got quiet all of a sudden?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So if everyone can hear me now, so I haven't been muted this whole time. It looks like my audio just went down. I think that's my That's my. It was a tsunami on the mic, I guess. All right. Yeah. It looks like the driver may have just spontaneously reset. So, cool, perfect. So, the whole purpose of pardon power is to correct injustice and abuse of the system. So, that would mean it's ripe for the pardon power. And the second problem is Trump has made it crystal clear he's going to prosecute his enemies, and so you want to protect Hunter Biden from that. So I think that's another very good reason to do it. Having said that, 𝐒𝐤𝐜𝐜𝐜, and I have forgotten his real name, but we reference him a lot. I love this guy. He is a legal YouTube channel. He has something like 4 million subs. He is hilarious. He is obviously extraordinarily intelligent. He is left-leaning, but he is fair. And one of the things I like, his videos are often hilarious, but he did a video that was clearly very serious, and the title of it was just Joe Biden pardoning Hunter is wrong. And it actually, I thought, was a very good video on it. So in order to be fair and give people a chance to think about it, we have linked that video in the bottom. But one of the things that he pointed out was, look, it is now a race to the bottom. It's a race to who can do more unethical things and things that they shouldn't be doing. And yes, he absolutely has the power to pardon his son. He has the power to pardon anybody he wants to. But we all knew when Trump was abusing that power, and we all called him out for abusing that power, and it makes it more difficult for us to call him out for that if we do it too. And yes, there's one side that's not playing by the rules and another side that's playing a lot more by the rules. But what you do in that situation isn't not just give up and stop playing the rules. And all of us know that you shouldn't be pardoning people that you have a vested interest in. What was the first precedent of this? Long before Trump, but Trump pardoned 260 people that he knew personally, including the father of his son-in-law. So it's not to say that, Biden did.
If you were a political donor, you could be pardoned.
Yeah, you could buy pardons.
I think that's the problem, is to call Biden out on doing this pardon when Trump did far more egregious things with the pardon power and not mention him, or W for that matter, who also did a number of very questionable pardons, I think is a bit disingenuous. I think we have to look at the context of the situation we find ourselves in modern politics these days. So I think we need to come to the realization that the pardon is just as much about righting wrongs as it is preventing further wrongs from being done.
Do you think that the pardon power should be limited? Should we make a law limiting that power? We couldn't make a law. It would actually have to be, so this is hypothetical, because I don't think, barring a significant change in how our country is structured, I don't see another constitutional amendment coming up any time in this country's future, not at least in the next 100 years. So given that, this may be entirely hypothetical, but should the power to pardon be either limited ethically by saying you can't, we're going to have some method, you can't pardon family members, yada, 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 or should it be removed entirely, or should it just be left the way it is?
Ignoring the fact that changing the rules would be nearly impossible, as you pointed out, I think we don't necessarily want to limit the power, but I think it would be good to have kind of a review of when the power is used. So some organization, I hesitate to say Supreme Court, but that would be the logical one, to review every pardon and say, yeah, this passes the sniff test. No, this doesn't.
A good question in the live chat. Will Trump pardon Diddy? Not only is he apparently going to pardon Diddy, but my hearing is Diddy is now the new nominee for Secretary of Defense.
You can't say that into modern political context because it could very well be true.
Well, here's the scary thing. Hulk Hogan has said that the Trump administration has reached out to him for a position in the administration. And that is true. That is absolutely true. The Trump administration has reached out to Hulk Hogan for a position. I don't know what it is. I know that they are going to now have to have somebody else for the defense. There's a couple of positions that look like they need filling. I'm not... I don't know what to say. You cannot make this up. Hulk Hogan. I'd almost at this point, I think there is maybe one position that he could hold, and he would be the best for the job, and that would be Secretary of State. And here's why I'm not kidding. It's because the entire administration is a clown car, and what better way to represent the current administration of the United States by having Hulk Hogan as Secretary of State. Then at least when people shake hands with him, they'll say, oh, you must be the American representative. They'll know. They'll get it. It just projects America in a way I don't think anyone else can right now.
And think about it. He could leap across the table and wrestle world leaders to the ground and force them to comply with our desires.
If any world leader attempts to get ahead of him all right, thank you, Peyton. What was it? If anyone tries to get ahead of him in a photo, we'll know that we'll have a leader who can actually jump in front of everybody else and push his way through. And apparently that's a requirement now. Trump did that, at NATO? Who did he push aside when he was at NATO?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know who it was or can't remember who it was, but I do remember the incident happening.
It was humiliating. I was humiliated. I was like, my president is so...
Out of the way. I'm more important than you are.
I'm sitting there going, like, is this band camp? What the hell is... I mean, he was acting like a 12-year-old.
Yep.
All right. So, we have some minor technical issue. Not sure where it's coming from. I'll work on it. All right. So... Speaking of Hulk Hogan, maybe, who knows what he's going to be. Now, Biden has also been talking about something really interesting and unusual. This would be unprecedented. It can be done. It's sort of unprecedented. It kind of happened with Nixon, but not really. And this is to do a preemptive pardon, so to say, I'm pardoning you against prosecution for possible things you haven't even been charged with yet. And he is considering that for a large number of, so these would be blanket pardons for basically anybody Trump has ever promised retribution against. This would include Special Counsel Jack Smith. This would include Merrick Garland. This would include Liz Cheney. 𝐋𝐚𝐬, what's his? I can't believe I've forgotten. How do you pronounce his last name? The Republican, the other Republican on the January 6th.
I know who you're talking.
Yeah. So he is basically considering pardoning all of them, even though I don't think they've done anything wrong. Nobody has accused them of doing anything wrong that I'm aware of. So I don't think they've done anything, but he's concerned that the Justice Department is going to be weaponized against Trump's enemies, so he is considering a preemptive pardon. The counter-argument against this that I've heard that I find somewhat compelling, and if I were them, I'd be 𝐋𝐚𝐬, that was it, thank you, is that it makes it look like they did something wrong. Why do they need a pardon if they didn't do anything wrong? And it is going to give a huge boost both to Trump's narrative that they did something wrong, because why would they need a pardon if they didn't? And it gives a boost to the narrative that this is a corrupt administration because it is giving blanket immunity to anyone who did the, quote, corrupt investigation and persecution, quote, again, of Donald Trump. So you're protecting people who,
his name.
Yeah. Yeah, dear Lord. So I don't know. So have you heard about these considered preemptive pardons, and what are your thoughts?
I think the best way to put it is they're inappropriate until you look at the fact that Trump and his transition team have made very clear they intend to go on what effectively amounts a witch hunt for anybody who has ever said anything even remotely critical of him. To the extent that, you know, if you're a late night TV host and said, you know, made a joke about Trump, they're going to get you. I mean, that's the level of pettiness these people are going through. So if that's the kind of people we're dealing with, I think maybe preemptive pardons is not entirely inappropriate. You have to look at these things in context, and I think that's the key here.
What about the argument that the people that he's most considering pardoning now have the highest profiles and would at least be able to defend themselves? He can't pardon, unless he's planning on pardoning Stephen Colbert and like everybody. That's a good. We should look this up. This is something we need research. Go look this up. Can he just like invalidate it? Like pardon the entire country, and he can't, because you can't pardon by class. You have to pardon by name. But could he just say, I pardon anybody who could be prosecuted by Donald Trump's administration for any activity? I wonder if technically that's even possible.
I don't think so. I think you have to have a specific individual.
Yeah.
To name. I also think there has to be kind of a specific charge. You just can't do a blanket pardon and say any wrongdoing this person ever committed in their entire life is now pardoned. You have to say that I pardon them for the following.
Yeah, I know there's some degree of wiggle room because you can't say anything related to a specific event or whatever. But yeah, you don't actually have to get to specific charges. That's that, because that was Nixon hadn't been charged yet when he got and what was the other preemptive pardon? I've forgotten. But doing like before. So Nixon was preemptively pardoned, but it's still, at least they knew that a crime had been committed. He was going to be charged, and he was going to be impeached first and then charged. In this case, this would be preemptive pardons before anyone's even suggested that a crime has been committed. So it's unprecedented in that regard. All right, so let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on that, and I'm glad I'm not the one who has to make the decision. What I am hearing is that there's actually a number of people, including, I think, 𝐒𝐚𝐬, who have said that they do not want to be pardoned. He said he's not afraid of Donald Trump and that he doesn't want to be pardoned because he's done nothing wrong. So I don't know. I don't know what happens. That leads to another question. This is the most upside down world. What happens if you get a pardon and you say, no, I don't want it? We've never had to ask that question before.
Well, I mean, it used to be the standard was you had to have been found guilty of something, and that you had to show contrition for having done so. And now it's like, whatever.
Titan has apologies, corrected you, Commander. You did, in fact, error. Trump can pardon people just by thinking about it. All he has to do is think that they're pardoned, and they're pardoned. It's the same as declassifying classifying material. Oh, dear Lord, that's the Cheney defense along with Dick Cheney. Exactly.
I envisioned something like the old Aquaman cartoons where you saw that series of, arcs coming out of his forehead to summon the fish or whatever. The arcs coming out of Trump's head to park whoever he wants.
Oh, it's either laugh or cry. It is laugh or cry. I am thankful for every meme that people have been sending me making fun of this, because it's laugh or cry, and I'm really glad that people are finding the humor in it, because speaking of, I can't make this shit up. I don't know how. So Justin Trudeau in particular is very concerned about the tariffs that Trump is saying that he will initiate. Now, they had a meeting, and in that meeting, the official, both of them came out and said it was cordial and very friendly. What we've heard from other sources, and very productive, what we've heard from other sources, in that, in fact, it was the exact opposite. It got extremely heated and contentious. Trump said he would not negotiate at all on the tariffs, which he is now saying is going to be 25%. And Trudeau saying that would be a body blow to the Canadian economy, just absolutely catastrophic to the economy in a way that it would not be to the United States, and he does not appreciate an ally doing that. Were you going to?
It'll have an impact here as well. We get a lot of goods from Canada, and I don't think the U.S. has, the capacity to replace all of what they're going to be squashing by putting the tariff in place.
Well, and if we were doing it just to Canada, I'd have more confidence in our ability to withstand the damage that those sanctions are going to do to the United States. But if we're engaged in 3 trade wars simultaneously with our top 3 trading partners,
it's kind of like Oprah, You get a car, you get a you get a tariff, you get a tariff, you get a tariff.
And what makes him think that 3 trade wars is a good fucking idea? He lost the one he engaged in China with, by the way.
He's a freaking moron.
Oh, sorry. I didn't forget. I know he's a moron. I just keep forgetting how. No, he's not a moron. He is some level lower, below which the English language has not yet created a word, because nobody envisioned the possibility of something like this ever fucking happening. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read a very short news excerpt of this meeting. This excerpt is going to come from what, in my view, is a friendly media source to Donald Trump. So this is not going to come from the New York Times. It's not going to come from a left-wing media source. It is going to come from a media source that is going to, in my view, be as favorable to Trump as possible. The news source I have chosen for this task is Fox News. This is what Fox News had to say about that meeting. President-elect Trump suggested to Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau last week that if a tariff for failing to address trade and immigration issues would kill the neighbor to the north's economy, maybe they should become the 51st state, sources told Fox News. Last Friday, Trudeau flew to Mar-a-Lago unannounced after Trump threatened to impose sweeping tariffs on Canadian products. Specifically, Trump is threatening to impose a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico over their failures to curb the flow of illegal immigrants and illicit drugs in those countries to the U.S. Now, details are beginning to emerge about the meeting between the two men, which Trump called very productive, before nibbling on crab cakes and slurping down oysters. The issue of tariffs, border security, and trade deficits were front and center. This doesn't say that was a joke about becoming the 51st state. I don't know if it was a joke or not. I've looked through several other sources, Al Jazeera, Indian Times, and let's see, the only one that said that it was a joke was Economic Times, which is a subset of the India Times. And they said that it was said in jest, but deliberately to mock the prime minister saying, well, if you can't survive as a country, maybe you should just be one of our states. So either, in my view, he meant this seriously, which I'm a little scared that we can't rule that out, unless I'm really just way off base, or he said it to try to humiliate one of our closest allies. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Please.
Can a NATO member invoke Article 5 against another NATO member? Asking for a friend.
Justin Trudeau hasn't thought of that. I really hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't watch the show. Yeah. Hey, that's a fair question.
It is. That shows you how insane the world is right now. That an absurd question like that actually has some level of relevance and truth to it.
And is at least within the possibility of realistic imagination in the future, where it gets so bad that. I mean, the other thing that you had pointed out, and I was very concerned when you pointed it out, so I've been looking into it, and it's been floated. But what you had pointed out was that at this point, the EU may be in the position of just saying, what we're going to do is create another organization that has all the same rules as NATO, operates exactly like NATO. We're going to invite everybody from NATO into the organization except the U.S., and then just start relying on that organization, and because they can't kick the U.S. out. So just okay, fine, U.S. leave it on its own island, and now NATO becomes completely obsolete because nobody wants to work with the U.S. And our NATO alliance, I think, is extraordinarily fucking important. Yeah. So that thought's been a little concerning, and I was talking with let's just see if we got this. No, we don't. Okay, I'll get that in a second. I was speaking with a friend of mine in Germany, and he's like, "Yeah, we're actually," he goes, "we're talking about it in the streets of Germany." It's like, why is the U.S. in NATO at this point if Trump's just going to undermine the entire organization? So, and we do have. All right, thank you, Titan. Titan has sent me a picture. Okay, we do have a picture of the pardoning. Okay, because that was important. So this was a picture. Here we go. Yeah, it's of the January 6th, because they also are going to need pardons. So here we go. There. Thank you for that. Yep, that's exactly. I have a feeling that's how it's going to go. Oh dear Lord. So. Yeah, I don't know what Trudeau is going to do. There's no way he's going to convince Trump not to do it. The only possibility is that somehow somebody in his cabinet says, hey, listen, let's just say that after your meeting with Trudeau, you kicked his ass and he got so scared that he implemented these new rules that changed everything. You get to declare victory, don't implement the tariffs, and, everyone go home. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I did not realize how bad this is going to be for Canada's economy.
The problem is that with all the criticism he's been taking for this, it's one of those, he's backed into a corner and can't give in. He has to put the tariffs into effect to show that he is the strong man. He's the same situation that Putin is with regards to trying to end the war.
That's a really good point. So okay, so let's see. We covered I've got to go over what we've done here for a rundown. Hulk Hogan nominated for cabinet position. We don't know which one yet, but presumably it's going to happen and happen soon. Preemptive pardons for anyone who's ever criticized Donald Trump, and Trump proposes that Canada becomes the 51st state. I think we've covered about all of it. And there's this one other. Yeah. So United Health, the CEO, Brian Thompson, was assassinated. He was shot, I think, once in the chest, but it's clear that the person had it was a targeted assassination. He had waited till Thompson was he ambushed him. He waited for him until he was ready to get him as he was coming out of the Hilton. He had a getaway plan. He had
the guy had at least 3 rounds that he intended to fire. Whether he did fire them or not, I don't know. And they were all engraved with some word on the bullet itself.
I did not know that.
Deny, delay. It was basically an indictment of the whole medical insurance setup of never trying to do anything they can to avoid paying.
Well, and the release of internal documents that say that too, that say even if it's a legit claim, here's how we get around it by just causing enough delays and in some cases where the patient actually dies off, so then the point is moot. And you had said this earlier. I mean, the number of memes that have been going out celebrating this guy's death, and it's not that I think anyone,
you have to look long and hard to find anything that's critical of the guy who did the shooting. It's like, why the hell didn't I think of this?
Yeah. And I had said it on an earlier stream. One of the things I was saying, that's going to be the argument, is this guy was just exercising his legal rights to fire a weapon in the middle of the city, and Thompson just jumped in front of the gun. What we were talking about, and I think this was our last stream or 2 streams ago, the problem with undermining the middle class, and especially if what you're doing is sending them all, into the lower class, poverty, below the poverty line, so on and so forth, which is the problem is when you start to take away their health care, when you start to take away, and I think we've been talking about school lunches. When they start to take away all of these other things, you end up with a problem where the only thing they have no food, the only thing they have left to eat is the rich themselves. And if you're wealthy, you probably don't want it to go that far. And I realize it's a little bit of the classical capitalist game of chicken, which is how much can we take from them before they revolt. But the fact that the number of memes that have come out in support
it's not too dissimilar to what you see in the mid to late Roman imperial period, where people from the wealthy families have to go all around not just with a bodyguard, but like a detachment of troops to keep them safe from the mob who hate them that much.
The Universal Healthcare Sister Porpoise, $2. Thank you very much for the super chat, Porpoise. We appreciate it. United Healthcare used an AI with a 90% error rate. I assume that's not a joke. Oh wow!
They had the highest level of denied claims of any insurance, medical insurance coverage.
This was this also on Twitter. No, it wasn't on Twitter. It was on one of the Twitter. Wasn't Blue Sky, but it's one of the new sort of Twitter copies here. Interesting exercise in jury selection. Find 12 people plus 1 or 2 alternates in New York City who don't know anyone who's been harmed by United Healthcare. Oh, yeah. Well, so they had the same problem with getting a jury for Trump.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, I don't know. You think of anything else that you? Let's see. Macron. There was a no confidence vote in Macron, and it turns out that South Korea did in fact make a world record, and this is true. Shortest executed martial law in world history. that was they got it over
7 hours or something.
So I don't think it was even that. I think it was 4 in terms of whether you count it from when he withdrew it versus when he. Yeah, I think it was 7 when he withdrew it versus when he was ordered to. Yeah. So oh God, I get it. Yeah.
There's a pattern that really alarms me, has me concerned. But we keep seeing all of these very conservative, very rich people who firmly believe that the rules should not apply to them. They can do anything they want, and the rest of us need to just quietly take it. And whether it's Erdogan in Turkey, Orlan in Hungary, all of this kind of stuff. And I wonder, why is it all happening now? You can't come away from it without beginning to suspect that there's some grand orchestrated conspiracy from behind the curtain by somebody, Russia, who's playing puppet master for all this. It's hard not to come up with that kind of mentality.
One of the problems is, and I don't know if asymmetrical warfare would be it wouldn't be the appropriate term, I'm sure, but we've underestimated countries that fight in different ways than we do. We've been able to use our economy and our industry and the power of the U.S. dollar to wage war. That's a large part of how we defeated the Soviet Union. A lot of China's...
We underestimated the Viet Cong.
Yep.
We underestimated the Taliban.
Yep.
We have a record of doing that. We want to fight the conventional war where everybody lines up in 2 neat little lines and we have an exchange of fire, and then we say, oh, you got more guns than we do, you win, or vice versa. And when we find a situation where the other side is not playing by our set of rules, it really throws us for a loop.
Yeah. And so China, and this was Trump threw out the Trans-Pacific Partnership when he first saw it. And the reason he did that is because he's an idiot. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the irony of it was when he first saw it, he actually correctly identified it. He said, this is not a particularly good trade deal. That's correct. It was not a particularly good trade deal. The reason is because the Trans-Pacific Partnership was not a trade deal. It was a way of getting an embargo against China without violating international law and declaring war. And what we would do is, because the Trans-Pacific Partnership included every Pacific country except China. And the deal included that and this was the central part of the deal, it was buried there, but it's the only reason we wanted the deal, was because buried in it was, if any country, even one outside of the partnership, engages in intellectual property theft of a country that's in the partnership, everybody in the partnership has to stop trading with that country. Without this trade deal, that language is an embargo and is an act of war, which we have not done with China, and we have no other way to get other countries to stop. The reason we lose trade wars with China is because it's only us. The Trans-Pacific Partnership would allow us to get everybody China trades with to stop trading with them. It was a huge tool. It was not a trade deal, but you had to call it one because you couldn't call it the Trans-Pacific Act of War. That's just bad naming. So, and then the funny thing was, somebody must have explained it to him. He figured it out and then tried to bring it back. But yeah, what were you going to say?
I mean, it was too subtle for him to appreciate what it was until effectively after the fact. And then it was like, oh, damn, I made a mistake. But, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. So, and would be able to actually easily win trade wars under certain circumstances with China because we would have every one of their trading partners along with us. Don't have that now. So, one of the reasons China was able to so handedly beat us in a trade war is even though their economy is not as strong as ours, their economy is run by a single person. And that person can make a change on a dime to say, okay, we're going to overproduce soybeans and knock out the U.S. soybean market, which he did, and wiped out the U.S. soybean farmers. Trump saved the farmers with a bailout, but then said, oh, you see, we won. No, we lost because we had to bail out our guys. And I did have let's see, we were talking, what was this? How on earth did I?
How did I get here?
How did I get here? I just did a boomer moment. We were talking about. Okay. Well, you would. Oh, yes. One of the reasons, the only reason, China is as powerful as it is because they've been very successful in essentially a kind of warfare that we don't really recognize, think of as warfare, or combat. And that's stealing all of the research and technology that we do. They actively try to steal, they say they're collaborating. They're like, oh, we want our scientists to collaborate with yours. No, they want to steal any scientific information they can. They steal any technical information they can. The espionage, that's it. Their number one goal is espionage. They don't want to make a stronger military than us. They don't want to. And then they learn how we build things. We put all of the money into R&D, and they get the benefits of it because their money is going into espionage instead. And we have not really tackled that in the way we should. I think we're going to soon because as soon as TikTok is off the App Store, apparently China is never going to be able to get any information from the U.S. ever again. Yay. And then Russia, which has a completely different method of warfare, which I think you kind of have to see to understand. You and I have talked about this before because we've both seen it. We both know, but it's this very Trumpian way of creating reality, and Big Brother just tells you what to think and what's going on and what the reality is, and you believe it and go forward.
I think it's less that for them than to simply make you call into question any source of information.
And that's so when in the first Trump campaign, they had bots working on both sides. And they were hacking both Hillary's and Trump's emails. And while it was true that they would rather have had Trump win, their primary goal was just to create such chaos and confusion that we couldn't operate because we couldn't tell fact from fiction anymore. So that's why it's an asymmetrical war. I mean, that's a really we've had Starsky on. He's creating his business to try to combat that kind of thing. But how serious has the U.S. military taken this problem, and how aware are they of it?
There are elements of the U.S. military that are aware of it. The trouble is, the military is both a bureaucracy and a careerist organization. And so to get ahead, to get promoted, you need to kind of echo the CEO's line. You need to, if you're going into World War II, and there's this little group saying, "Oh no, carriers are the wave of the future of naval warfare," but all the big admirals are saying, "No, battleships still remain the queen of battle." Then you back the admirals that are saying battleships are the queen of battle until Pearl Harbor happens, and suddenly everybody goes, "Oh, maybe that wasn't quite exactly on target." And I think that's part of what goes on, because whatever is the current method of warfare du jour that everybody's studying and working out ways to combat, that's where everybody wants to focus, because that's the way you get noticed, that's the way you get ahead. And people who think out of the box are kind of viewed with suspicion, and they're seen as not being team players.
Yeah, reminded me of my days teaching high school. Actually, very much the same thing. Whatever the principal came up with for the new teaching thing, even if everybody knew that it was the dumbest thing you could do, it's like, "Yay, let's all get behind it." And the people who said, "Yay, let's get behind it," become a department head, and the people who don't. But yeah. I don't hold a grudge. At any rate. So rounding this out, aside from education, I guess one question I'd have is well, I'll round this out in a minute. I'll finish this topic and we'll go on to the final one. But how do we combat that?
Combat what?
Combat. Okay, so what we know, for example, that Russia has been paying, especially alt-right media sources to blog. They had famously, I've forgotten her name, but she was a spy for the FSB. She infiltrated the NRA. There's pictures with her of Mitch McConnell, all these other, she's Mitch McConnell, of course, is hanging out with Disparia. So they have allowed Trump, they have empowered Trump to create his own reality by saying, no, the January 6th, this was my favorite, I forget who had said this, but basically something along the lines of, we live in a reality now where people who literally tried to overthrow the democratically elected government are considered patriots, and anybody who asks why were they breaking into the Capitol building, why were they, trying to why were they saying hang Mike Pence, why were they going after Speaker Pelosi? Anyone who tries to say, just even question these things is considered, unpatriotic or even a terrorist. So it's sort of like we've gotten to this level of through the looking glass. How do you combat that?
We've gotten to that level, in my opinion, because we're afraid to be confrontational. We're afraid to call out and deal with people that do that kind of thing. So the moment, let's say, the Trump campaign starts saying, oh no, they're patriots, we're trying to overthrow the government, at that point, something should have been done to lock him away forever. And I realize it may go against freedom of speech or something, but it's, freedom of speech isn't freedom of speech, because you can't go into a crowded theater and yell fire, because that puts people at risk. And in effect, what is happening with this kind of, they're patriots bullshit is exactly that it's yelling fire in that crowded theater. You have to hold people accountable. And the frightening reality is the Democrats don't like being confrontational. They don't like holding people accountable. They just want to go with the flow. And so we let the authoritarians and the billionaire class get away with unconscionable crimes, honestly. So I think that would be the place to start, is to say, we need to start holding people accountable. We need to grow some cojones and start dealing with this before it gets out of hand.
Well, and
out of hand.
That's a good point. Well, and especially, it's like when the judge in New York, at first I was sort of like, well, okay, he's holding Trump accountable, and he was to a much larger extent than others had, but he also, when Trump was making these courtroom outbursts, I forget how many he had made, like a total of 30 before the judge said, okay, one more and you're going to jail. They just fined him the maximum each time. And he's like, I really want to try to treat you the same as everyone else. So one more and you go to jail. It's like, wait a minute, anyone else would have been getting a day in jail after the second or third courtroom outburst. Yeah.
Yeah, if Levon gets tried for, selling unlicensed cigarettes in the street, and he says anything even slightly critical, and he gets thrown in jail for an additional 30 days for contempt of court, and yet you get somebody like Trump doing all of this nonsense, breaking the rules repeatedly, and nothing really happens to him. Let's be honest. The fines that were imposed for contempt of court on him would be the equivalent for you and me being fined a quarter. I'll be happy to break all the rules all day long if I'm only going to be fined a quarter for it.
That is another one. I think it's in, I want to say Sweden, where the speeding tickets are proportionate to your pay.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's not a bad idea, because it's like a speeding ticket is really a tax on the wealthy, a tax on the poor, because the poor have to pay for it. The wealthy, $50 is nothing, or whatever the ticket ends up being. So before we wrap up, I've heard that there have been some gains in Ukraine. I think Russia's strategy is to just go as far and as fast as they can, so that when Trump gets into office, on the belief that he's going to do what the guy that he's put in charge of Ukraine has said he's going to do, which is just freeze. Said he's going to do. I don't know what power he's got to do it, but again, we'll see. But propose at least freezing the ceasefire, freezing the quote borders at wherever the zero line is at that given moment, and then negotiating from there. How is Kherson holding up? Is it still, that's going to be the fact that part of Russia is now occupied by Ukraine, hopefully is going to be a bargaining chip that they can use to get at least some of their land back. How prepared is Zelensky to negotiate, fully aware of the fact that any negotiation is going to be resisted by at least 50% of the population, and that they're going to be invaded again? Where do we stand, do you think?
I think the situation on the ground is not too dissimilar to what it was 2-3 weeks ago. The Russians are making gains, but at hideous cost. Casualty rates that they're racking up right now are pretty much the highest of the war so far. But as we've learned, the Russians don't give a damn about how many of their men and how much of their equipment is lost in prosecuting the war. The one thing that I saw stories about that I found interesting was there are apparently a lot more desertions from the Russian side of the lines. Soldiers just up and leaving. So if that's actually happening, as opposed to just a story that somebody's made up and leaked, that's actually happening and the desertions are starting, it might be one of those beginning of the end alert points, if you will, letting you know that things are going bad for them. I don't think we're going to, as I've said, several times. We're not going to see a complete collapse of the system, but I think we could see things starting to unravel. And honestly, I think the situation in Syria is compounding that, because if he loses Syria, in addition to the disaster of this war, in addition to the fact that now Sweden and Finland are both parts of NATO, and pretty obviously there's a good chance that Ukraine may end up as part of NATO because of what he's done. Yeah, the chances are that people may decide it's, you know, time to act, to make him go away and try to find some sort of solution to salvage what little is left. But I don't think we're right at that point that it's happening, but I think we're seeing indicators that it may be starting to build a small bit of momentum in that direction.
And it does look like as if the Bashir al-Assad regime is going to fall. The Syrian rebels just captured earlier today Hama, which is apparently a key city.
Yeah. And there's also talk that the Russians are now preparing to evacuate their base at Latakia.
So how many bases, well, okay, so how bad a blow would it be if Syria falls to the rebels, at least just to Russia?
Russia, if they're kicked out and the Assad regime falls and some new group gets in, the real question is, who does the new group favor? And that's one of the problems right now, is that the rebels are a kind of a loose coalition of different groups who are backed and working for different, not necessarily friendly people. So you have some that are being backed by Turkey, you have some that are being backed by Saudi. All of that is working into that equation. So who's on whose side? And you could literally end up with a second civil war following immediately on the heels of this one when it ends, because there's no common ground or foundation of agreement between these groups about what the form of a post-Assad Syria should look like.
That's
Russia losing that base kind of relegates them to secondary power status, because it means they don't have a viable major base outside their own territory anymore. They used to have like Cuba, Syria, they were really friendly with the Indians. All of that has kind of changed, and they don't have those base accesses. The last major base they really still had was Latakia, and if that's gone, it's back to either ports that freeze over in the winter, or you're bottled up by the Turkish Straits.
Yeah, I can see the oligarchs not being too pleased with that. For a man who wanted to see Russia return back to the old Soviet, the old Soviet state. Titan did ask a question I was going to bail, but I think it's a good question, and you know more about this than I do, so you'll be educating me on this. Isn't that what BRICS is all about? Could you tell us about that trade? It is just a trade partnership, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's basically countries that aren't honoring or participating in the sanctions against Russia. It's Russia's allies, if you will. I think what it really is not necessarily allies, but people who aren't going to be caught up in the great power politics of the situation and are looking out for themselves of, if I trade with Russia, I can get better deals on natural gas and petroleum products or what have you. So I
Likely
don't
to get.
see that it's going to go very far, because the moment the prices go back to where they were, the purpose behind being part of that organization really kind of dries up.
All right. Well, Lance, thank you again for another pleasant fireside evening. I appreciate you joining us. And we will be doing an In Time covering the week's news on Tuesday. We still don't have a set time for that. It's been floating a little bit, so we'll see where that goes. And we have a couple of other things that we are looking at that I think should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, I'm going to be on with Greg Terry next week or the week after that. We're looking into that, a few other shows. It's if you want to find out, come join us on the Discord. You can also see how we do our breaking news, how we and we have channels on from gaming, entertainment, politics, and it's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys will join us on the Discord. There is a show. It is called The Transposition. I know I've met, I think, most of the people on that show at one point or another, and they're just starting up, and we'd really like to try to bigger channels have supported us. We'd kind of like to pass that along. So if you stay in the live chat, you will be, right as soon as the credits are over, you're going to be sent over to them. Check them out. We hope you're going to enjoy them and stick around. Please do remember to hit that like and subscribe and share button. And if you like what we do, the best thing you can do for us is tell your friends and tell people who you think are going to enjoy the content as much as you do. Pass it along, word of mouth, and that's really great for us. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Lance. Thank you for all the mods and everybody who, and thank you again to everybody who did real good work. Again, we ended up not going, but that was textbook how we run when there's breaking news. So thank you to Carpazian, Blonde Bombsheller, and Annette, all of whom contributed to this morning's running down on the earthquake. And also thank you to 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴Trevor, who gave me the link on the pardon, because I do think that's it. It's still an interesting discussion to have. So those links are also still in the description, and we will see you all on Tuesday, barring any other breaking news. Thank you all, and have a good night.